I feel a push all week to share on a topic which many will find heavy. And so, if you are unsettled by some of these topics, I remind you that the promise of God is one that you will have no fear. For God gives you a spirit of truth and of love, not of fear. And perfect love casts out fear. The presence of God does not allow for it. For the presence of God is an ultimate faith that overcomes the dark. It knows the power of that force which is unspeakable, but we have pointed at with the term Christ, the Christic. This force of compassion. It has so much faith that fear can't enter. And so for those who may become unsettled as they listen, or are unsettled by such topics, I urge you to make the priority in your life to know the presence of God, beyond the notion of an idea, beyond religious ritual, but alone together, you with God, in your heart, overflowing. For in that space, you will find freedom from the fears and anxieties that the world and the demonic, the enemy want you to feel. And I share on this topic because we need to know about it. Because right now, inside of our human story, if I were to use the word curse, spell, magic, black magic, witchcraft, the vast majority of humans, due to cultural programming and educational programming, will think that I am some dated human being without education who doesn't know anything. But these terms have been masked in our science. And many of these terms, when you begin to function in the spirit or in the quantum, if we are to reflect it on science, are very much part of our human story. Not only are they part of our human story, but they are inside our culture and inside elements of our culture that most families accept and trust without any guard. For instance, in Hollywood, in the creation of movies. And I will show you in this video how Hollywood writers are not only casting spells on your children and on you, but they are openly involved in demonology. And they are then creating these spells inside of the sphere of Hollywood. I will show you this. But before I go into that, we have to understand the difference between a human who moves in the spirit, who brings in changes to this reality from the spirit or the quantum field, and the human who only believes on a matter on matter, worldly approach. There are differences, complete differences. We are taught as human beings that the limits of our power are to be worldly, that our intelligence, that our speech, our actions, our knowledge is that which impacts reality. This is what the education system leads you to believe about what you are as an organism. But the reality is that you are a soul. And when you connect to that space, you can begin to witness that when you move in the spirit or in the quantum, that you have the capacity to influence reality from that space. Yeshua said, "Ask and it will be given." This is the space whereby true prayer begins to work, where you say a prayer in one corner of the world and in another corner someone who doesn't know you answers the prayer and didn't know you were saying it. Or you start praying for something and synchronicities begin to arise and to line up and to manifest before you. You can alter the outcome of reality when you know how to make a home in the spirit. This is a part of the human function. Not everything that we think, speak and do manifests in reality. because most humans are living from the space of the worldly. And the worldly space requires that the self trained to you by the system sits in the throne of your life. And this is why many people give up on God and on prayer, because they are brought into religion and they are told you are American, you are a doctor, and now all of a sudden you are looking for something in life, and now you are born again Christian. And so they add on to this structure of self inside of who they are, this concept of born again Christian. And now they have a book of things which are wonderful that they should aspire towards living their life as. And this ability to love in a supernatural way is asked of them. But that rebirth was incorrect. It has a beauty and a benefit, and I am seeing the high value in it, believe me. But there is another value beyond that, which is to at some point take that human and say, there's a clarity here that the nationality and the doctor, the roles of the world, they have to come out from the throne of your life, and God, and now a supernatural approach has to sit in the throne of your life. The toolbox of the natural is going to shift, and you are going to move and place God in the throne of your life. That's rebirth. For you must die and Christ will be born in your place. This is what it references. And many humans don't quite, or we are somewhere in that spectrum of self and Christ in the seat of our life. But many don't have prayers answered. They don't see their prayers manifest because they are praying not in the spirit. They are praying from the level of the world. And it doesn't work always so great from there. To elevate into the quantum, into the spirit, is to elevate to a frequency which is above the ruler of this world. Jesus said Satan is the ruler of this world, and it is so. And therefore, to fight against Satan from the worldly frequency, not from the spirit, is near enough impossible. The battle for the kingdom of God, compassion, to be manifest is going to be won in the spirit. Satan's goal, and the fallen, the demonic, are to have as many humans here suffering as possible. For that is their source, that is their energy. That is the frequency of human where they can get into the human and sense and feel the addictions and the pleasures that they do through human bodies. It's also the frequencies that they can feed on. The anxiety, the suffering, the pain, the fear. They feed on it. So they wish for you to remain there, and therefore wish for you not to reach into spirit. And so if you are praying from a worldly approach and your prayers are not answered and bad things keep happening, Satan's got a victory over you in that sense, the demonic. Whereas if you find a way to come over and to move into the spirit, then the fallen ones are in a dimension that's higher than the 3D. But they are not in a dimension that's as high as what your soul can reach. But you restrict your soul with the belief that you are merely the body. For you must walk by faith, not sight. And therefore, when you walk by faith, you call in from upstream in the river of light, as we might call it, to this reality, the will of unconditioned love. The will of God. The presence of God. And when you open that channel to those higher dimensions, the Christic dimensions, you will know your peace, your unity with all things. And when you move in separation, you will move under the governance of the ruler of this world most of the time. And so there are two different approaches to prayer, and one gets results, I guarantee you. To pray in the spirit, when you elevate your frequency, you don't necessarily only get good or bad. You don't only necessarily get good, you can get bad as well. We have to know that. As Bob Marley said, complaints are prayers to Satan. It shocks people to know when I was staying in Africa that dealing with the witch doctors who were targeting the children in our care, for sacrifice. I've had police hand children to me to protect them from men wanting to sacrifice them with this religion. That those witch doctors would fast for 5 to 7 days, and then they would cast spells and call on demons, send demonic curses to people. They were elevating their frequency. They were going to a higher dimension, but not to the Christic, for their intention was harm to another. Their intention was not compassion. And so when you elevate your frequency, you can call in bad, because there are laws inside the 3D reality, and they are not suspended. If a good human being falls off a building, and a terrible human being falls off a building, both are subject to the law that they will hit the ground and hurt themselves. Both are subject, those laws are not suspended. Likewise, when it comes to the frequency of moving into a higher state, that we can believe upon, we can be sown with wrong belief, we can be sown with fear, with doubt, and we can play a role in manifesting that by attracting into our fear, into our worry, into our doubt, entities and energies from those higher dimensions that do not serve the Christic, entities from the higher dimensions that want you to suffer. So if you elevate yourself and then you move into a state of fear and worry about a certain topic and doubt, they can come and they can begin to maneuver because of you anchoring space for them to be around you with your fear. They can begin to maneuver in reality for your timeline that you don't want to see to happen, because they recognize they will get energy, they will feed on your suffering from it. Likewise, if you pray and you stay in absolute faith, and that faith is dominance in this reality, open-hearted joy, faith, trust, thanksgiving. Worship is your superpower. Thanksgiving is your superpower. That frequency of righteousness is your superpower. Then you can make a space for the angelic to carve a way for what you are asking for what you are believing for. And I have witnessed this to be absolutely true in life. And the angelic will come and will assist in manifesting the will of unconditioned love, the desires God has placed in your heart in that state of thanks and worship and thanksgiving, moving from the spirit in the quantum, and will assist in manifesting them in this reality. It's not instantaneous. It's like a river of light. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it does happen instantaneously for some. It all depends how potent the connection is that you break through these higher layers that are restricting humanity. The fallen ones are in a dimension above you, but they're not in a dimension as high as the Christic. And so with that understood, I hope you can begin to understand what I have to say here. Curses. There are 3 types of curses. There are curses that human beings give to one another whilst unconscious of doing so. Perhaps they are deceived by the enemy, perhaps their own trauma is doing it, perhaps their programming is doing it from their personality, but they unconsciously curse one another, and I'll explain shortly. The other is intentional cursing, where people come forward and they physically set about to call darkness to curse a human being. And the other is that we curse ourselves. Now the Bible says the power of life and death is in the tongue. And I absolutely believe that this is certain. And I will show an example in the life of this human sitting here talking. But this last week, I will give an example that a very wonderful human being with a great heart reached out and said, I have a message from Spirit for you. And I do not accept other people's revelation until I have spoken to God. And I immediately almost replied to this human and said, I am uncertain. There's something about the things that you've said that don't match my reality, and I am just not certain. There's a sense of discernment telling me I'm uncertain here. But I was open with them, very clear and precise and honest and truthful about what was going on internally. I said, but I will remain open, because all people, when they speak for Spirit, can have a message tangled in self. and I have my discernment, so I will remain and see if there is something. I have had messages of great importance from God delivered by other people when I've been too busy, too tangled up in the responsibilities, and so I'm open to this. This then resulted in a conversation, and in that conversation there is a certain event in our private life right now where there is nothing but hope, faith, joy, trust for the perfect, wonderfulest outcome possible. And not one time has a single human being lacked any faith in that or allowed anything negative to enter that story of our life. And this human shared a seed of doubt. Potentially this negative timeline will happen if you don't do this. And I rebuked this person and they got upset. And I said, I must rebuke it. I refuse and reject any doubt around this situation. And you are the first human on earth to try and sow any doubt, and I rebuke it. I reject it. Because if I take that seed of doubt, for no one can divine the future. Fortune telling, divining the future, it is a dangerous game, and I'll explain why. But no one can divine the future. Even if they are getting a sense of, no one can do that. And if you take that doubt into you and you nourish it in any way, you let that seed in, then it can germinate. And that worry and that doubt can attract forces and energies, especially if you are in the spirit and manifesting, that can get behind it and assist in bringing that timeline into your reality. This is how it works when you move from the quantum. This is how it works. This is how the power of prayer works. And the enemy will love to sow doubt or to sow a timeline that you don't need. Now this then resulted in this person offering me something from oracle cards, and I said, I am sorry, but I don't touch cards. Nothing must come between a man and God, and oracle cards is certainly not a practice that I see as having any value when a human can have a connection to spirit that can be heard internally. Cards, there's too much chance in this. It's not Christic, in my view, when it's all only needed to go within and know the Christ awakening within. Why would we need such things? So I said, I always reject cards, and now I feel that there's something off here. I said it to her, because I always, and God knows, I always reject oracle cards. I never ever toy with these things. And then it got very heated. And for those of you who know that I have been unwell and I'm on a healing recovery at this time, you will know that, and this leads into cursing yourself, that I became very ill. There were multiple elements: malaria 3 times, typhoid, babesiosis, weakness. I made videos about my spiritual ego playing the biggest role in my becoming ill. But right now I am stronger than I have been in years, and I am getting stronger and stronger and better and better. And not only is my faith the reason for that, and I'll explain shortly, but also my sight tells me that this is a fact. And in the heat of the conversation, which in fair due to this person they deleted, but they said, and what you are doing is not working for your health. Whereas there I knew immediately, here's another, and I said, there you go again, somehow trying to sow a seed of doubt. And I said, these are curses. You are trying to voodoo curse me in a sense, even though it's not done with intention, with negative timelines about the recovery and about this other situation in our lives. And so I paused and wondered, where's that coming from? And this conflict to the degree they deleted what they said. And I love this person, I really do. But I stand by that you cannot curse other humans with negative timelines. You have to rebuke them. When people offer them, rebuke them. And if you meet one who divines the future and fortune tells, you would need to be certain that that human is perfectly pure and in connection to have any validity. If I have a human in my life who I know is in the spirit, and they call me and say, God's warned me you shouldn't go here, and this happened recently, For those of you who recognize we were praying to God for a sign about something, and someone around the world had a dream and warned me not to go to the UN COP27 that I was invited to. But if you go to a fortune teller, you don't know that human. And they may have the demonic working on them. And you may be a good human who's getting into spirit and praying, and then the fortune teller comes and tells you, you will be in a car crash. And all of a sudden you believe it. Oh no, I'm going to be in a car crash. And you marinate it. You seed the doubt. And the timeline for your life that Satan wants, with the suffering and the pain, you begin to create it and assist with the creation of it by creating the frequency inside the field of consciousness for the quantum elements which are negative to enter and start to navigate and maneuver what it must. For they do have influence here. We know they can move in people. That's why we have the horrendous events in the world. And so you must reject fortune tellers and diviners of the telling the future. You must rebuke these things, for they can lie to you. You may think, but they've predicted my future before. They may have given you a doubt that you created, or they may have given you a belief that you created, but they didn't predict it. I am certain of this. And so, in all love to that human being, this is what stimulated my want to speak on curses. Now, this is a curse that you put on yourself, but they come from others. They share with you a doubt, and you begin to turn the energy against you. This is not the same as those who set the curse by calling on the demonic forces to follow you, to make something bad happen. But that happens also, and I've seen it in Tanzania. I saw churches in Tanzania who said they were praying to Yeshua, and they would pray for people to have pain. They would pray for bad things to happen to people. And so for all they masked it with the name Jesus, it didn't matter that they were saying the word Jesus. Their intention, their heart was of Satan. And sometimes you would see it have impact, truly. And I bared witness to this. The other curses, as I say, the intentional, they're different. They can be, right, I'm going to plant a seed of doubt in this human to make them suffer. And this happens with mainstream media constantly. We've witnessed it in recent years. You can cast a spell into humanity by doing that. But you can come to a human with intent if you are practicing your dark magic and say, I'm going to fill them with doubts right now. By using divination, I see a future where you are going to be, and you curse the person with it. That can be done through accident or intention. It can be done through instruction from communicating with Satan, or accident, unconsciousness. Now, I also mentioned cursing the self, and I mentioned my health, so let me explain that briefly. When I first became unwell, I abandoned, for whatever unbeknown reason, all I know about God and belief and faith and the power of that. And so I would wake up and feel the pain, and I would adopt the identity of a sick person, and I would speak about it. And it got so bad that I was bedridden for nearly 2 years. It was horrendous. And there were people all around the world praying. There was endless spiritual battles going on about this. It was just a constant chaos. This community saved my life at one point, because there is a space for matter-on-matter medicine sometimes. It was really a very difficult time. And you know, the turning point came with an internal turning point. I fasted for 21 days, and at the end of that fast, I stopped, and someone said, John is unwell, and I rebuked it. I said, no, I'm not. I'm healthy. Spirit, God doesn't want this for me. I'm healthy. It just hasn't happened yet. That was the turning point. I started to speak life into my situation. And I would feel the pain. It was there. But I just rejected any thought and speech and identity around it. And so I no longer focused on the sickness and owning the sickness. I focused on the healing and owning the healing. And it began. And right now I know I am well and whole and healed. It has happened. Hasn't yet manifested in the 3D. But piece by piece it is. and therefore I know all is well. It takes time sometimes to flow through the river of light, as I witnessed when I mentioned the angelic beings who prodded me in my liver. It takes time to flow into the 3D sometimes, depending on its challenges, on the friction between its healing and manifestation into the physical from the quantum, from the spirit. Now that's curses out of the way, and the video is quite long, I know, but next I will talk about spells. And what is a spell? Well, spells come in a few forms as well, and I'm not that au fait with them, but I know this. If you look at the work of Dr. Emoto, who froze water under the intention and emotion sent to it from human beings, you will see the structure was beautiful with loving intention, and it was ugly without loving intention. You are made up predominantly of water, and therefore a human can send destructive energy to you if you are not shielded, if you are not present, if you are not omitting the frequency of thanks and love, which is going to pierce and protect much around you. Worship is a superpower. Thanksgiving is a superpower. Rejoice in your suffering. There's a reason for that. You must find that rejoicing to begin to have power and push back that which is afflicting you. But without that shield, which we don't all have all the time, for we waver, another human who is following the satanic, following the rituals, they can intend pain toward you. They can intend suffering toward you. And the water in your body can be disturbed by that. Because the quantum entanglement means that wherever you are, you can tangle with another human being based upon your focus to them. And so that's one element of spells which I am certain is correct, going off of experience. Beyond there, though, spells, if you look in modern society, are about programming the mind to have a certain perception. Spells are about altering the mind of a human to have a certain perception. Propaganda is like a spell for many. You can cast a spell on the masses. This can be done. You can believe things based upon the media, and it can be relabeled spell casting. Now, I mentioned Hollywood, and as I've said earlier, the only way to overcome Satan is to rise above to the Christic. And therefore, the only one who can deliver us from evil in this world is the power, the force, the frequency that is above the evil's frequency. It is above the higher dimensional frequency, which manifests in humans. We have that darkness inside all of us. We must see it. We must know it's there so as we can close the doors to it and we can overcome and bring more of the goodness. We don't want to see suffering. We don't want our children to live in fear of one another, etc. But you must elevate to God, to the Christ, to the white light of compassion. You must reach there to overcome it. And you can. I, as a human being, cast out demons all the time from people. And it is not human behavior. It's not John. It's not a role, a self doing it. It is when I am filled with the Spirit by emptying of self and allowing God to sit in the throne, to say there is no self, there is no individual, thy will be done in the body. No will of John, your will only. Thy will be done. God in the throne. When the Spirit overflows, it purifies. It purifies things. It takes the demonic. It either pushes them out of people or it brings them into you and then transmutes them back. But I deal with the demonic constantly, and they are very, very real. They are here and they are affecting many people, many people. To do so, the Spirit must be present. The Spirit, that heightened space of love, must be with you. You must be carrying that. And that only happens when self is not there to condition the love of God, to refract it, to pursue its selfish desires and ambitions. It's the will of God. That is what you embody. If you look at Marvel, the Spider-Man movie is a perfect example. There is a scene where his aunt is praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, and deliver us from evil.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us.
Inside that movie, at the point where she says, deliver us from, the character, the Green Goblin, evil character, bursts into the house through the wall, and she starts screaming. And she says, deliver us from, and he says to her, say it. He has dominion over her, and she screams, evil! And of course, God doesn't deliver her, because right in front of her is the evil. And of course, the whole concept here is that God didn't deliver her from evil, because a being without spiritual function, but with physical capacity, physical strength, it will be the one to save. In this instance, a superhero. That plays its own role inside the mind of a human, for starters. But in this sense, you may say it's just a scene for dramatic effect in a movie. But right now you have just cast a spell on the audience that God does not deliver you from evil. It's also said that the Christian prayers are a waste of time here. Look at it. She's at the foot of evil and nothing's happening. God's not there. You say it's just for dramatic effect. The man who created the Green Goblin is called Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison is an open demonologist. He openly promotes conjuring demons. He speaks of being possessed by demons. If you can handle the negative emotions and feelings they bring to you, then they give you great power, he says. He follows the work of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley believed only in his own personal desires, own self and desires, and manifesting them through satanic sigil. Aleister Crowley spoke often of child sacrifice. Now, when he referenced child sacrifice, many say he was talking about ejaculation, wasting his sperm. But that doesn't change the fact that in one of his pieces of work, he very clearly wrote that the most valued sacrifice is a little boy, a virgin. He wrote that. This man was a beast, and he partook in things that people don't know. I am certain of it. And so this black magic that he was engaged in, Grant Morrison tells everybody it works. You should do this, and we can all manifest our own desires. He doesn't speak about the will of God. His own desires matter only. When I saw him speaking of this, he was drunk, he was high on drugs, and he thought it was brilliant. Recently, the last I heard of him, he came out as non-binary, unsurprisingly. Of course, he has to ignore the core fundamentals of God's creation, because this is the spirit of rebellion of the enemy. If a human being is calling in demonic forces, which he is using it and he's adamant it works. He's dressing up like a woman to try and make sure the demons don't recognize him and things of this nature. He absolutely is doing these sigils, and I know they work. Sadly, I know they work. And his character is out there, casting that spell onto your children. That God does not deliver you from evil. Spirit does not deliver you. Only physicality does. Now this realm, the ruler of this 3D realm and the worldly self is Satan. The physical self that we are programmed with, which doesn't access the quantum or spirit, it doesn't access there. it does not have the power to overcome evil. It may at the last stance, if someone's coming to hurt you and you physically overpower them, yes, of course. But the war against evil, the spiritual warfare, it is won by elevating into the presence of God alone. For otherwise you are here in the 3D, and your soul is refracting in here under the governance of a 4D ruler. You must pierce through the 4D in living in purity. Pierce through the 4D and reach the Christic and bring that force into the world, which begins to access the source code. The source code can write over the top of all of the programs that the 4D dimension have. It is the original source code. You can access the 4D with your sigils and your magic, and you can bring different programs into the 3D matrix. But if you access the 12D, if you go up to the Christic, even those 4D codes get wiped out, for you're going to the original source code, not the hacked code of this reality. It's the best way I can describe it. That spell leaves a subconscious imprint that God doesn't deliver you from evil. And yet the only way to truly deliver mankind from it is the walk in spirit. It's to know our capacities as an interdimensional species. It's to know our capacities as a species who can manifest with prayer at the will, not of his own selfish ambitions and desires, but of the wisdom of the Christ. That unnameable force of compassion and love that we have pointed at with the term Christ and Christic. And of course, this boils down to this human being is using drugs to alter his consciousness, and therefore he does not know the Christic. He's never animated the sacred secretion, so he doesn't know the truth. He knows a false truth, and he's certain it's truth because it is supernatural. But you must live in purity for that. And who am I to say what's pure? Live in purity, thought, word, and deed. Who am I to say? Well, before you become too entangled in the world and destroyed by it, I always say the fastest way to find your holy conscience, the truth, before the rebellious nature takes over and you fall in love with the pleasures of the flesh and the world, is to imagine a film crew following you around. And they're going to document everything you think, say, and do, and show it to everyone you love, and show your children, etc. And everything that comes up that you immediately don't want in there, where that comes up from is your pure, holy conscience. It knows. Part of you knows. And when you live from there, when you fast and you reject the world and what it has to offer you, for example, and you take the self, not that you fast and you ask God, what are you going to give this structure of self? But you spend that time taking the structure of self out so the Christic can be born in you. When you do that, there you connect and you enter the higher mind whereby the love of God is coming through. And there you learn about dark, not because you're focused on it, but because the light is emanating in your life and you are building at its behest. And as you build, you encroach on the dark and the dark retaliates. But you recognize that it only enters in its retaliation when you are not centered in the Christic. When you allow impurity to enter, it will encroach on you. It will set you back. It will push you back. And so you just take a knee and you be humble and you repent. And you recognize what you have done that you should not be doing. As we all will. As we all do. And you restore yourself back to that frequency. And you stand again, encroaching on the dark and learning about its ways as it comes to you. Because it will. You can't spread light without eliminating dark. And so be cautious, guys. Black magic, witchcraft, curses, spells, they are here. They are in our human story. And they are very present. Even in your children's movies, you must be cautious. You must ask, what is this doing to my child internally? What's it doing to their perception? Superheroes do not deliver us from evil. God does. Always will. But only when you understand how to move to the Spirit. If we continue to live in the fallen state, the state Satan offered us, in this dualistic mindset, in this separation, this little self, personal desires, personal wants, personal identity, then we live in a space of fear, and that fear restricts the spiritual toolbox. And that's why I say get rid of that structure of self. The self will come back, but get rid of that structure so that what is remaining is the love with which you loved, is the love that you are. And there that perfect love casts out your fear. For you must die and Christ be born in your place. You must die in the unspeakable, unnameable love that we've tried to name with the word Christ must be born through you. And that Spirit has ultimate power, dominion in this realm. But you must do something for it to be with you. And it doesn't come to you when you're pure. It comes to you to make you pure. But to anchor its power, to have the power to drive out demons, to have the power to decode other bandwidths of reality that others cannot, you must anchor it in your purity. And thereby purify all around you. I will leave it there, I guess.